Allow me to run a concept by you. Acid Trip, the video game. Or maybe OCD meets all of the drugs. All of them. Intrigued? Well then, let me introduce you to Katamari Damacy REROLL, a remaster to an old PlayStation 2 title released back in 2004. The story behind the title is a fun one. Developed and published by Namco, the designer, Keita Takahashi, had quite a bit of trouble to push the idea for this game, in no small part due to him being a relative small fry within the company, and the game having a premise which, at best, confused his superiors. So, he wound up taking a bit of a backdoor route, utilizing something of an occupational school Namco had built up to establish new developers, getting a grant worth less than $1 million and, with a handful of students, set out to make a game which would wind up becoming a cult classic. But what is Katamari Damacy, aside from being a bizarre look into the imagination of a Japanese art house student, sculptor, and an eventual playground maker? Perhaps the most concise way I've heard it described is a snowball simulator. You play the Prince of all Cosmos, a dude who happens to only be a few centimeters tall in a weird green suit, who pushes around a ball called a Katamari. If this ball touches something approximately smaller than it, that something sticks to the Katamari. The Katamari grows larger. Now go roll up as much of the world as you can. Weird concept, I know, but I can't deny it's a fun one. Between an upbeat and, we'll say, eclectic music track, simple yet effective graphics, though with a somewhat limited view distance before popping occurs, and a world polluted by rampant consumerism, not to mention a bizarre story, it can be incredibly fun, even addicting, though far from perfect. The setup is like this. The king of all cosmos went on a blackout bender and accidentally destroyed all the stars in the sky. Whoops. Well, since he can't really take responsibility for himself, he puts fixing the mess on his tiny son, the prince, instructs him to use the Katamari to roll up things on Earth to various sizes or certain specifications in order to remake the stars and constellations. Weird, nonsensical, and very tongue-in-cheek. This whole narrative sounds like something out of Alice in Wonderland, and that's kind of the point. To be entertaining and not take things at face value. To imply something which should be horrifyingly catastrophic and treat it like a whimsical flight. Anyway, you begin with a brief tutorial giving you the basics of control. This is how you move, turn, brake, flip around, look around, jump up to get a lay of the land, and boost. You're offered two control schemes, the original and the newer, simple scheme. Personally, I would recommend the newer scheme, though I had some unfortunate trouble getting it to work on my controller. Aside from being easier to control, the real benefit is the consistency with boosting. In the original scheme, boosting is inconsistent at best. The newer scheme allows for a far more precise and controllable boost, which is far more useful. Anyway, following this tutorial, you're thrown into your first level. You begin small, a mere 5 cm Katamari you need to build up to 10 cm using fallen candies, tacks, and other tiny assorted items scattered messily about a home. As the levels continue, you'll need to complete larger objectives in more expansive locations, usually with a greater time limit. But for now, the game does well in easing you in a few centimeters at a time while unlocking additional locations within the same house. And yes, that's a thing. There are only 3 maps in the game: the house, town, and world. And depending on the level, you'll have a new set of items to pick up, new sections gated off, etc. The game does okay at hiding this at times due to the sheer size of some of these maps allowing you to explore different parts, but it does feel repetitive at times until, on the final level for each map, they open up the entire thing and allow you to go wild, which is always good fun. To interrupt repetition, they introduce constellation maps. These are optional maps you can play which give more precise objectives and conditions. For instance, instead of trying to be your largest possible Katamari, collect as many crabs as you can, collect as many swans as you can, except the swans haven't hatched from their eggs and there's 1,000 unhatched eggs lying around. Roll up a singular bear or cow, but only the largest one you can find. Or my favorite, make a 10-meter Katamari. so you don't know your current size and need to eyeball it. These all offer a decent bit of variety, but truthfully, I'm in it for the big levels. Throw me in with the smallest Katamari and roll up everything, and I do mean everything. That flower pot? Of course. The dog which keeps chasing you? Just you wait, fucker. People? Yeah, there are definitely stages where your Katamari more closely resembles John Carpenter's The Thing. Cars, trucks, boulders, statues, houses, buildings, islands. Yeah, if it's not water or air, chances are that at some stage you can and will pick it up. Before you reach that stage, however, you'll need to contend with being a little itty-bitty guy. It means there are things which are too big for you. Try to roll it up and you'll wind up bumping into it. With enough speed, you'll crash instead, and some of what you picked up will go flying off. As a Katamari, most things will ignore you for the most part. You'll get a few animals who will chase after you, however, attempting to crash into you. Get large enough and most living things will stop ignoring and or chasing and will attempt to run away. If they're roughly equal in size but small enough, you'll stun them, after which you can add them to your collection. Watch out, however, for those who escape the stunning or bumped off your Katamari, as those who manage to do so will begin rapidly sprinting away, through any and all objects, through the map and out the level entirely. Which is a bit of a cheat mechanic, but one or two objects rarely matter much in the grand scope of your Katamari. The other part of this bumping mechanic is, of course, getting wedged. With your size being extremely variable and this being not far removed from a school project, of course you're bound to get stuck on things. The game recognizes this and compensates by violently hurling objects off your Katamari until you're small enough to unwedge yourself. Which may seem like an annoyance until you realize the game is essentially keeping you from having to restart a level. What is annoying is the game's climbing mechanics. Since so much of what you roll over is uneven terrain, mechanics were created to allow you to slowly roll up certain sheer walls and ladders. This doesn't work all that well, with your misshapen ball often crashing off objects which should be acting more like stairs, or flinging you off objects mid-climb, making many situations much less fun or intuitive than they should be. Which I suppose leads us to speaking of difficulty. At a basic level, Katamari Damacy REROLL is an extremely easy game. While it's certainly possible to fail a level, I can't say I've ever done so. It really is more of a playground where the challenge is whatever you set for yourself. The king, of course, offers a little motivation. If you barely pass a level, or heavens forbid, fail, he'll make his disappointment known. Go above and beyond and he'll express greater appreciation like you're a small child or maybe a puppy. Reach the objective fast enough and you can create a shooting star, which you can view on the constellation screen. Then there are hidden objects through our levels. Most stages have presents like little cosmetics you can wear, including a camera which can unlock a photo mode. After you complete the game, you can roll around to find cousins of the prince who are hiding within levels, each one holding a different cousin. So while the base game is easy, if you want to make Dad proud or be a completionist, things become much harder. So what else is there to say about Katamari Damacy REROLL? It's a fun little game whose remake certainly adds some quality of life, allowing far greater resolutions and loading times than the PlayStation 2 could ever dream up. There are a couple other annoyances, like how you're unable to change options and display settings until after you've completed the tutorial. As well, amusing as he can be in his own way, the King of All Cosmos can become rather annoying. While his pre-level briefs can be skipped, his interruptions mid-level cannot. Thankfully, if you complete the upper size limits on their largest corresponding levels, you can unlock Eternal Mode, which allows you to roll around without time limit or interruption. Great for those who wish to replay the game at a more casual pace. If you're looking for something fun, quirky, and cheap, or a nice little time waster you can pop in and out of, Katamari Damacy REROLL might just scratch an itch for a little while. Those who like to collect every little thing might find some measure of catharsis in trying to find all of the objects featured, or pick up everything they can throughout a level. Those looking for a more traditional game or can't get into the bizarre stylings might wish to skip it, however.